All right, we're going to be working on our Watercolor Funsies worksheet. And as you see, I taped it down to something hard. So hopefully you have some painter's tape or masking tape, or I'll even take Scotch tape at this point. Now this video is going to be a couple parts because I have a 5-minute limit. So just follow along as best you can. If I get cut off at some point, I'll try and make it up in the next video. I have some things ready. I have my cup of water and my watercolor brush. I have my watercolors ready and they're activated. I sprayed a little water on them, and I have some paper towel, and then I have a few other things to help me, like some salt. I have some rubbing alcohol for this last one and other things. So just follow along with me as best you can. We'll start with the saran wrap, meaning plastic wrap. Ideally, I would tape in between each box, but I just don't have the time, and so we'll just do it like this as best we can. Okay, so for this saran wrap one, we're just going to start with like a nice loose paint. Just paint in nice amount of water in it. We want some wateriness because the plastic is going to kind of work over that water on that paint and create like little ridges. It's gonna we're gonna place it over this real quick. Have to kind of work quickly. I want a good amount of just brushing a little extra water on this because I want to now put this plastic wrap on here. Okay, and the plastic wrap is going to catch some of that water and kind of like scoop it up and stuff. And then we're just gonna leave it like that. Okay, we're gonna let it dry. Okay, the next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna do the salt. So I'm going to activate some paint again, and I'm going to go ahead and fill up the space. Now, ideally, we would be doing this on more watercolor paper, but given our times and our distance learning and everything, we just have to work with what we got. So I have some salt over here, my Trader Joe's pink Himalayan salt. What up? Love this stuff. Okay, and while it's still wet, you have to do this while it's still wet. You have to work fast. So sprinkle on a little bit of salt. And remember, salt is what dries us out. If we have too much salty food, we become dehydrated. So with our watercolor paint, when we sprinkle salt on it, it kind of goes, it sucks up some of that water. It creates a cool little effect behind it. So we'll just leave that there. It has to dry. Some of the effects that we're going to get from our watercolor funsies will be experienced a little later on. I'm going to move over to the sponge now. Okay, now in your art kit, I gave you a small sponge like this. And thing about sponges, and my old roommate was very particular about this, is that when you wet it, you actually really need to squeeze it out, including when you're doing the dishes. So as we wet this right now, we need to get it a little bit wet, but we actually want to squeeze out most of the water pretty much. So it absorbs the water really, really quickly, but then becomes like too much water. There we go. Okay, and sometimes too, sometimes I'll even dry it off because look how quickly it absorbs into the sponge, and I don't want a sopping wet paper. So I'm just gonna pick up some of this color. And what's fantastic about a sponge is that it so easily creates texture. And as you're working with your sponge, you want to kind of mold it into different shapes so that when you're creating a texture of something, it's nice and random, and it doesn't look too much like a pattern. This is such a great technique to use to show the roughness of a rock, or maybe even the swirls of marble, or even the texture of a brick or something. And those things are more naturally made, and so we don't always have exact man-made patterns. So that's why twisting your sponge and moving it around helps to create a little bit more randomness. Sponging is probably my favorite technique. Okay, I'm going to finish the next ones in another video very soon. So get through those ones first, and then we'll do the rest of them.